lived away for about 2 years. Other than that, I've been in Hancock my entire life. My father's parents were both born in Lucca, Italy, so he is 100% Italian. My mother had 3 Swedish grandparents and 1 Finnish grandparent. So she's Swedish and Finnish. We spent 1 week in Italy. We drove. We were not part of any tour. We left Switzerland and drove down to Italy with an older couple that was part of our group in Switzerland. And we visited Florence and Rome, and I loved it. I felt very at home there. And I had a phrase book. I didn't speak Italian, but after hearing it all my life, my accent must have been pretty good, because if I said something, people started rattling off in Italian, and of course I didn't understand the answer. But yeah, it was very nice. I loved it. I would like to go back. We did not visit Lucca, and that's where my grandparents are from, so someday I'd like to see that. My grandmother on my mother's side, they were Helen and Wilfred Johnson. My mother was an only child, so me and my brothers were their only grandchildren. So it was pretty nice. We were very close with them their entire life. Spent a lot of our summers out at their house in Twin Lakes. And they had a cottage at Misery Bay in Toivola. Spent a lot of time there. And then they moved to Hancock, right next door to my parents. So we always had a very close relationship with my mother's parents. My father's parents lived in Hancock. They were both born in Italy, and we saw them a lot, you know, fairly often. They lived in town. She always had a steady supply of Oreos or chocolate chip cookies, and so we popped in there a lot as kids. I can't say we were quite as close. She had a lot more grandchildren than my other grandmother, but yeah, saw her a lot, and she was a wonderful cook. So my grandmother on my mother's side, we called her Mama. She was always knitting, and so she taught me how to knit when I was very young, I'd say 10 or younger. So she taught me how to knit and crochet and embroider. So that was very good, because that carried into my adult life, and I still love to do that. And I can remember when they sold their house in Twin Lakes, they would stay at the cottage in Misery Bay for the summer months, and then they would stay with us at my parents' house for the winter months. So I was probably in the 5th and 6th grade, and she would be up very early, maybe 5 in the morning. She'd get up, put on her pot of coffee. And so I got in the habit of, you know, getting up early also. So the two of us would sit at the kitchen table. I don't think I was drinking coffee at that time, probably not, but she would have her coffee and we were both knitting. And then it would be time to go to school, but those were good mornings. When I used to stay with them in Twin Lakes, they liked to go to the neighborhood bar. That's where they would go and visit their friends, and of course they took me along. And at first it was just me. I don't remember my brothers being there, so yeah, so that was kind of fun. We would enjoy that. So, but at their house one time, I remember my grandmother was having a mixed drink, and I think it was a gin and tonic or something. So I asked her if I could have some, and she said, sure, go ahead. So I helped myself to some gin, too much gin, and I think I got sick, but I guess it served its purpose. I can't drink gin to this day, so I guess it wasn't a bad thing. Can't do that nowadays. But she let me do almost anything I wanted. I wasn't a bad kid, so she was very lenient. there were two theaters in town. One was called the Orpheum and the other was the Carriage. And you could go to the Orpheum and see a double feature for 10 cents. The Carriage was more expensive. You could see a single feature for a quarter. So we did some of each, but I would get 50 cents every Saturday, and it was enough to buy popcorn and whatever else I wanted, and watch the movie every weekend. There was a whole crew of us from the neighborhood that went together. We were the first ones to get a TV in our neighborhood, and so people used to come and watch TV at our house all the time. And the station was from Marquette, and it was only on the air till about 8:30 at night. And they finished with a movie. It was called Home Theater. And after the movie, that was it. It was good night, folks, and test pattern. But it was interesting. It was snowy half the time, and the TV would roll, and so the reception wasn't wonderful. Nothing like what we have now, but it was a novelty, and everybody loved it. I was the oldest child in the family, and I was 5 years older than my next brother. So on paydays, which was Monday, we always had T-bones. My dad would bring home steaks, and I learned to love steak. But then as the family started growing, the tradition ended. I guess it got too expensive. I can remember a lot more meals of macaroni and cheese than steak. My mother worked pretty much the whole time we were growing up, so a lot of times she had to work at dinner time, so I was left to babysit, which was fine, and I often made the dinner for the boys, and you know, we got along. She only worked for a few hours. She was home by bedtime usually. But yeah, I did a lot of babysitting with my brothers. I started working when I was 15. I always had a part-time job all through school. And yeah, it was nice to have my own spending money. I worked at the Woolworth company in Hancock, the dime store. I loved it. School sweethearts. He was a senior and I was in the 10th grade, and it was in French class, and he was the only male in the whole class, and he ended up sitting next to me, and that's how we got to know each other. Neither one of us learned anything in French class. My line is, the only thing I got out of French class was a husband. We started dating that fall, and went together through the rest of high school and 3 years of his college, and then we got married when he was a senior in college. He was not Catholic and he was Finnish, but it wasn't an issue. I think he and my mother did not hit it off right away. She thought he was too cocky. But she came around, and finally she got to the point he could do no wrong. I think she liked him better than she liked me. But no, and his being Finnish didn't matter at all. And Catholic, we got married in the Catholic church, but that wasn't an issue either. My in-laws were wonderful. We did something kind of crazy though. Mike was Lutheran and I was Catholic, and neither one of us was going to change churches. So when the kids started coming, we started alternating, raising one Catholic and one Lutheran. That did not work out so well. So as it ended up, we have 5 Catholics and 1 Lutheran, and some don't attend church at all. So. But all good kids, they all had a good background. Even if they are not churchgoers, they have very good upbringing. We have 6 children. We started our family first year we were married, and we have 6 children spread over 15 years. The oldest is now 48 and the youngest is 34. When the children were little, I was able to stay home with them, and that was my job. When I was younger, I volunteered a lot. I taught Sunday school for about 10 years, and a big thing I did was I taught 4-H. I taught sewing and crafts for 17 years. I was in 4-H when I was young, starting at age 10, and I learned a lot there and wanted to pass that on to kids. My daughters, they all were in 4-H, and some of them learned to sew. Not well, but... With a large family, yeah, you're just busy all the time. Other than the volunteering I did, and those were mostly things my kids were involved in, I didn't have time for anything. I didn't have any friends. I never went anywhere, except we had a date night once a week. We'd get a babysitter and we'd go out. But other than that, it was pretty much raising kids. That was my life. And I wasn't involved in community affairs much at that time. I did laundry every day of the week. Just by the time you do your cooking and cleaning, and that was all there was time for. After the kids would go to bed at night, then that was my time. I did a lot of crafts, and so sometimes I would stay up way too late and do what I wanted to do, and then I was always sorry in the morning because you had to get up so early. But that's one thing I enjoyed after all my kids were out of school, is I never had to get up to an alarm again. Love that.